Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Partners in Grace International Broadcast. And so tonight, as promised, I have Deatrice Bell with me on tonight, and we're going to talk about her book that is called Come Out, Breaking Free of Any Bondage. And so, but before we get started with that, just want to introduce her, a little bit, just tell you a little bit about her, and I'm sure she'll give us a little bit more, and as well as we're going to talk about her book. But she was born in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and she's the youngest of seven children. She joined the Army in 1987, spent time serving the country, serving around the country. While in Germany, she met her husband, Johnny, and she has one child, right? One child, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Yes.
I birthed one
And
child.
she is ordained evangelist who aims to do the Father's work for the kingdom. And so, just that little bit about her, I'm just going to say that. But then I'm going to let her give a little bit more about herself. And as I said, we're going to talk about her book. And so, without further ado, I want to bring forth Miss Bell and and let the people know who she is, and so we'll go from there.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Apostle Twyman. I am so honored to be here on your show. I'm very thankful to you for this opportunity. My name is Deatrice Bell, the president of Raise Your Voice Publishing Company, the world's only voiceologist, because I teach you, coach you, and show you how to raise your voice, even through the pain, the hurt, guilt, or embarrassment. I'm grateful to be here. I'm so excited. I'm excited because I believe someone will be healed and helped through your show.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So let's get right into it. Okay. And so listen, if you have not read or have a copy of Come Out, Breaking Free of Any Bondage, I'm letting you know on tonight you want to get your copy, right? Because this is a great book. And so, reading some of the chapters within this book, one of the things that Deatrice and I talked about was the fact that what I thought the book was about. And so I thought the book that it was a spiritual journey for her, and that it reminded me of the good and bad, a war between good and evil.
Mm.
And I was mentioning to her how I felt that it was all for her and about her. But in this chapter one that I read, I just want to ask you a few questions, out of the book, and even the comment that I made about the book being what I thought being good and evil, a battle between good and evil. I want to hear from you with that as well. But in chapter one,
Mm-hmm.
I read about how the word misery, and you being a child at a very young child, and you're talking about your childhood. And to me, that word misery is a large word for a kid, right? And so can you just tell us something about that,
Mm-hmm.
and why you felt that way? And even as it relates to, me saying that I felt that it was a battle between good and evil.
Yes, yes. I use the word misery because it was the most heart wrenching emotion, feeling, and time. That first chapter of misery, it was because it also was when I first experienced it and seeing what was taking place of the evilness that my father was displaying. It was disgusting as far as, I'm thinking this was my protector, but when I walked in the door and saw that, it just turned the table, turned everything. When you think of the word misery, miserable, uh, uncomfortable, disgusting, as low as it can get as far as a hurt. Yeah. And you are correct. When I was preparing for this interview and praying, God brought that spiritual part to me, that it was exactly that. Even though at that young age, I didn't know anything about Christ, of course, we went to church. I didn't know anything about, a relationship with Christ or anything like that. So I wasn't thinking spiritually. Um, but yet I did not know my purpose at that time. I did not know the plan God had for me at that time. I was 9 years old. So I wasn't thinking about all of the spiritual part. But over the years, after sitting back and thinking, preparing for this night, I see exactly the spiritual side of it. Yeah.
Right. So, I failed to mention in the beginning, the purpose of writing the book. I just jumped right into it.
Yeah. The purpose
But
of writing. Okay, go ahead.
yeah, yeah. So the purpose of writing the book. Explain to us, what was the purpose of writing the book? I know you mentioned your father, and I know what was the purpose, but I want
Mhm.
our viewers know what's the purpose of writing the book.
Okay. The purpose of writing that book, I had to be healed and free myself of the demons that were attacking me.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, people may not realize we put the blame on someone else, but really, the more we're blaming them and walking in unforgiveness, we begin to get those same types of spirits attacking them and attacking us. So the reason I wrote this book, I had already forgiven my father. I was free of that, thank God. Our relationship was back with my father. Everything was fine. We were just seeing him grow as growing older. But there were still nightmares. There was still um, attacks that I was having within myself. And I had to find out what was going on. And as I prayed, as I seek God about it, He told me there were some areas that I needed to address. I needed to speak it out. There were demons I needed to get out of my spirit. I need to get it out, come out. And that's how I had to speak to it. This book wasn't just to bash my father or my parents, it was a healing, because I walked around embarrassed. I walked around ashamed. I walked around in guilt. But most of all, once I became an adult, I was portraying my father towards my own husband. That's why this book had to be written. And
Wow.
someone for others who are living that same kind of a life. I call it a child domestic abuse. In other words, our father never did anything to us. I don't even remember getting whippings or spankings. I don't remember getting any of that. It's just the fact of what I saw done is what built the hate. So, yeah, it's not to bash him though, but it's to heal others.
Right, but when you say what you saw done, you're referring to the abuse that your mother was taking. And
Yes,
so, yes. And
yes,
so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
yes. The abuse she was taking, the type of person she was, who, wouldn't fight back. So that instilled anger, because I was wondering, why don't you fight back? Why don't you fight back? So, of course, I'm not going to walk up to mom and say, hey, why don't you fight back? So, what took place was it just reside inside of me, uh, making me want to fight back, but not able to.
Yeah, and so, in one part of in the same chapter, you talked about deceived and how you were deceived, of your father, right? Because
Yeah.
you didn't know that he was abusing your mother until you
Mhm.
witnessed that, and that
Mhm.
you thought of him being, like you said earlier, a protector. And
Yeah.
so but also too, you said that but the fear and hate took over simultaneously and became a stumbling block. That's why I believe, with this book, that how it became, more about you, and it was all spiritual because of what you begin to see as a child, the abuse in the home, domestic violence between your mom and father. um, and it became, as like you said, fear and hate took over, altogether, and that will cause you to be that way. And so in chapter 2, again talking about the domestic violence, and I wrote this down, that domestic violence keep you silent, right?
That's right. Yes, it will.
It keeps
Mhm.
you
It
silent.
keeps you silent. Yes. And that's the number one thing that the enemy wants. He doesn't want us to cry for help. He doesn't want us to talk about it to anyone. That's because he can torment you while you're silent.
Right.
Mhm.
And so, can you share with us some experiences that you had during the domestic violence while you were at home? I know some of it is in the book, but
Mhm.
can you share with our viewers on tonight?
Yes, there were the times of oh, so many. There were the times of where I've seen she was spat on. Um, the times where I've seen where they left, but only he came back. And when she came back, her clothes were torn. She was abused, and when I asked what her hair, my mother had long hair, and there was straw in her hair. So I asked, I said, "Where were you?" And it was the sound of hurt that came out. And she said, "He took me to a field and beat me and left me there." And that's the first time mama ever said the word beat. That was the first time she ever stated what took place. And by this time, I was 16 or 17. Um, I've seen times when walking down the hallway and he'll come behind her with a stick, broomstick, the handle of the broomstick. So it was the things like that I seen. She will humble herself. And like I said before, the spiritual side was not clicking in my head. What was clicking in my head was fight back. Let's destroy this. So the anger, and of course, no one in their right mind will let their mom know you're angry with her. So all that was instilled, and I had to keep it quiet. I had couldn't go tell anyone that. Growing up, we really didn't talk about it as siblings. My siblings were at least 5 years older than me, so we really didn't discuss it. I believe that's just how much we hated it and how much we were very embarrassed by it. We didn't really discuss it among each other, and that's what's brought on the silence for so many
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. And I read in one part of the book where you said that your mom said respect him regardless. You
Yeah,
know,
that's what she taught
to
us. Yeah.
Yeah, respect him regardless of how he acted and what he would do and say.
Hmm.
So, as a child, what was going through your head with that? And then how does it, affect you today as an adult?
Well, hopefully, some of the things that were going through my head, I sure can't say on Facebook. Um, I don't want to be put in jail. But he was a heavy drinker, so there was times I would find something, anything to put in his bottles, hoping. Now, can you believe this? Get this. Praying to a God that I really don't know because I didn't serve him and worship him, but yet I'm praying, can you get rid of this man, going and knock him on off? So I was trying everything, but it's okay, Lord, he's not gone. He's not even sick. So it was those times, things like that. I remember one time he was downtown. I was downtown, and I just happened to see a crowd of people around him, and I didn't even know it was him at first. And then I noticed this. I mean, blood was just gushing out of his temple, and the shirt he had on was bloody. So the people were trying to get help, and when he seen me, the only thing I could think of was, why are these people helping him? So I just looked at him. I asked where was the key to the car. He gave me the key. I got in it. I went home. I didn't say anything to mama. And really, again, praying that the hospital will call and tell us something that I wanted to hear. But they didn't. He came home. That was very devastating. Very devastating.
Well, for your mom to tell you respect him, regardless, it actually made me think of, where this Bible tells us to honor thy mother and thy father,
Yeah.
so that our days may be long upon the earth. And so it lets me also know that she believed the word of God, and that was her way of protecting you, or you and your siblings, from the wrath of God of doing something wrong, towards your father. But as an adult now, and was it ever something that you instilled into your own child? Not to say if he were to see abuse between you and your husband, but just to honor and respect. And with that, as an adult, how well does that settle in you now to honor and respect those, that sometimes may be wrong?
It's very, very important because now my father lived 93 years.
Mhm.
And there was a purpose that he did not even know for his life being as long. Being the 14th child, he outlived all of his siblings. And so as I got older and what I instilled in my son, there's nothing better than respect, regardless. Of course, our child knew that he had to honor us. That's what we geared him up in. You will respect your father. You will respect what I say. And I'm grateful to that. He speaks on that now. He's 27. But he's seen a lot of my bad actions. My son seen and heard a lot of my bad actions. And it was only due to those spirits that I allow to take over me, to show themselves in me. I felt like I was so independent, no one could tell me anything. I felt like I was so strong that I wouldn't back down and let anyone have the last word. Because all those years I lived at home with my parents for 24 years, I always wanted mama to talk back.
Mm.
But she wouldn't. She wouldn't. Until the time she got sick and wasn't able to talk anymore. So all of that came together. Her shutdown shut her down totally, permanently. I did not want that. I did not allow that. And I was going to speak my voice as much as possible.
Well, I can see why your publishing company is named. Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. I totally believe if you stay silent in any type of situation, if you allow it to shut you down, you are allowing yourself to be shut down always. Because if you don't rise up, if you don't speak, if you don't raise your voice, and the title of my book came out of Isaiah 58, shout aloud. uh, tell the people of their wrongdoing according to the Bible. But yet, it's we can't stay silent and keep it all inside because we do not understand that our story can help or save another person. It can inspire another person. And yeah, that's why I named my company Raise Your Voice. But I've learned over the years I didn't raise my voice the correct way. My flaws as a wife, as a godly woman, when I did receive Christ in my life, my flaws were not an excuse because of what I lived through. So God had to reshape me, break me, and mold me over again. It was like God said, you're going to keep going through these tests until you pass them. And I tell you, it's a hard test to stay quiet when you talk a lot. I know I can get an amen on that. But I learned because I had to focus on, I want to please God. I had to focus on, I need to show and teach my child. My son and our relationship was so close because I was constantly mentoring him, mothering him, teaching him, disciplining him. You will not, I will not accept. I don't allow. And to this day, he's grateful for that.
So, one part of the book I read where I'm going to read this little insert. I'm not going to, take a whole lot out of it, but it says, the people we knew didn't care for or care to be around him. I have never seen any friends to come to the house to see him. I remember one night my niece was 9 months old. He was mad at my sister and he grabbed my niece and threw her on the other side of the room. I stood there in shock, and all we could do was till wait until he got over the rage later that night. And my question is, did the child survive after that?
Yes, she survived. Matter of fact, it wasn't a scratch on her. It was no harm done to her. She didn't even I think she had stopped crying. And when I think about that now, I know the grace of God had her, covered her. God wasn't going to allow the harm or any danger to come. And it's amazing. I mean, she stopped crying. It's like nothing happened. And growing up, she loved him more than anything. If she only knew, I wanted to sometimes just choke her, but I couldn't.
Yeah, but that type of rage, that is some serious rage.
It is.
Where you taking a 9-month-old child, but you said he was intoxicated,
Exactly.
and to sling the child across the room. But to God be the glory. It was truly by the grace of God that the child still lived,
Yes.
still didn't get injured or pass away from that incident.
Mm-mm.
And so I've also read in a part of your book where you all lost your home and then you moved
Yes.
to a new home. What was that like for you?
I came home from elementary school, and I saw the fire trucks, and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand. And one of the neighbors took me in and just told me to wait there for mom. And mama didn't share too much uh, information with us. At that time, she didn't share too much. All I knew is the house caught on fire. So we moved into an apartment area until she bought a new home. The experience was, we had our grandparents to lean on. One thing about it, we had our grandparents. We knew they were there at any time we needed them, my mother's parents. So everything mama needed, granddaddy provided for mama. That was his only daughter. So as far as food and clothing, we were good to go. But mama had to work often. Sometimes she had jobs that worked at night. She she was the only one that I ever seen work in the family of my parents. I've never known my father to have a job. During that time, it was cold, happened to be winter, and um, with my niece living there and my sister still there, I had something to bounce off of to ignore all the fussing and all the other things. But once we moved into the house, the new home, it was just me. So that move it was okay beginning, but then moving into the new house was very lonely. Very lonely. Wow, very lonely. I had friends, two really good friends in high school, and they had beautiful families. Their fathers, mothers communicated. And of course, no one knows what takes place in anyone's home behind the closed doors. But I would sometimes imagine maybe their life is like mine. But it wasn't. And not too often did I discuss mine with them, but they knew. They knew because I wasn't comfortable having my friends over to my home because I never knew how he'll come in, when he'll come in, what he'll do, what he'll say. At that time, alcohol made him a very type of person you just don't want to be around. In any case, the language, actions, you never knew what would take place. So it was like I was living on a tightrope, pins and needles, eggshells. And that wasn't comfortable at all. It wasn't comfortable at all.
Wow. Well, someone had a question in the chat, and I think they were referring to when you were speaking about your niece. And so the question is, did she suffer any emotional hurt? Well, she was 9 months old, correct? And
Yes.
okay. But emotionally, how did that affect the mother?
Um, it made her very, very angry. And of course, still at that time, none of us liked him or wanted to be around him. That really topped it off. But yet we still knew we couldn't talk back. There was nothing we could do. Because that's just how much respect we have for mama. Mm-hmm. When mama came and got in between, she put herself there as a shield for us and the baby. But no, there was no danger. There was no after effects done to the child. None.
Yes. And so there's another comment in the chat as well that most part, many people in our culture experience the same as you have experienced when there is abuse in the home. And in particular, when we're a lot of times from being down south, it is something that we can all relate to in our culture, as Prophetess Deal is saying, in the chat. But and so yes, it's an experience that many of us have, in life, in our culture. Um, but I want to ask you this, and so in reading the book also, um, that you went off into the army. So at this time, you went off into the army later in life, and I think you went in at the age of 24. Is
Yes.
that yes, at a late age? And so that meant you had to leave your mother behind because everybody else was grown and out of the house except for you. And so how did that make you feel, and how what was that transition like?
Well, I'm grateful that our family was close. The siblings were close. Me and my sisters are my rock of Gibraltar. They have always been all through my life. And um, when Mama was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, back then we did not know anything about what that really was. We had an aunt who had it, but she lived out of state. So for us, it wasn't steps. It came straight. It wasn't dementia first, it was Alzheimer's. So we had to learn how to cope with that. Mama was attached to me. So when I got on that bus to leave, I had my brother and my three sisters there with Mama. And as I was leaving, she's not quite knowing what's taking place, but she was waving goodbye. I cried the whole time. But my oldest sister took care of her medical and her finances. my She took care of the care of Mama all together. So my sisters would take turns coming and taking care of her until Mama wasn't able to feed herself anymore. And that's when she had to go into a nursing home. And during that time, my brother was take care of it at the nursing home. You go and he'll wash your face, he'll do her hair, sing to her, sit there with her. So I was grateful. I didn't have to worry about Mama no more because as far as I'm concerned, she was in the safest place. I didn't have to worry about her being afraid anymore. I didn't have to worry about her putting her hands up anymore for protection. I didn't have to worry about anyone insulting her anymore. My sisters took good care of her. And the times when I would call home before she went into nursing home, if he would pick up the phone, I just hung up. I've never spoke with my father over the phone until I was 33, 32 years old. So I was fine. Once I left, it hurt. I cried, but I trusted my siblings to take care of her, and they did. They did a great job. They did.
Right. And so, by saying that, what came to my thoughts was, as I said in the beginning, I felt like this was a spiritual war between good and evil. And so, and what your last comment made me think of is Jesus being the champion. He's being the protector, and how you talked about rest, and how you were so happy the fact that she was able, to be protected and get the rest, and be in a safe place. The same way it is, when we're in the Lord, when we trust him, right? When we trust him, it's the same way. And so as we getting ready to wrap things up, but so by this time, you joined the army, and your mother's in a nursing home. Eventually she passes away, and then you come back home.
Yeah. Well,
to
I come back to the States from Germany, settle down. I only stayed in touch with my siblings, and when I did go home, I would only go see them. By this time, years have passed. And as you say, this is so spiritual. My sisters, all three were saved. So they knew how to operate with me because I was still not delivered. I was still that quick tempered one. I was still that angry one. So let's not mention his name. Let me just come home and enjoy being home. But they would say, D, you're going to go see daddy. No, let's get on another subject. But over the years, once I did receive Christ, and after I had my son, um, oh, a whole nother story there by itself. When I received Christ, God told me, it was a scripture that I read, and God told me, if you do not forgive your father, if you do not forgive your father, he will see heaven before you do. I'm like, wait a minute, Lord, wait a minute. You can't mean that. And I sat there, and that's when I understood unforgiveness is a sin, that if you carry unforgiveness in your heart, God can't forgive you. And I wanted God. I wanted to be joint heirs with Christ. I wanted a new life. And I picked up the phone and I called my father. He never said, I'm sorry. And I wanted it, but it was just the type of person he was. He was very prideful, very prideful. So I accepted just the conversation. I accepted the love, because he really loved us. He just didn't know how to show it. He loved his grandchildren and they love him. He just didn't know how to show it. So when I spoke with Daddy and I told him, I love you, that was powerful. And I knew it had to be God. I knew I wanted to live differently. I wanted to live with my husband differently. I didn't want to be so cold and hateful, wanting to have the last word, quick tempered, not speaking to him for 2 weeks just because he didn't do as I wanted. I was tired of that. And I looked in the mirror and all I saw was my father. And I said, God, I need your help. And he came in as a savior that he is. When my son was 4 months old, I took him home. And that's when I went to see Daddy. And I even let him hold my baby. I barely let my husband hold my baby. And when we went out to eat, he was holding my baby and just staring at him. And as you say, this was so spiritual, because all the love that he had for us and couldn't show it, he was quiet, but he was showing it on my baby. And my son is the last grandchild, and he's no different or more special to my father than the other grandchildren. But I was mama's baby, and he will always say mama's baby got a baby. So over the years, I would constantly call him, and when I came home, we'll go see him. But the enemy tried me. The enemy constantly tried me. When mama passed and we were at the funeral, I'm sitting there praising God, but yet the enemy was trying me. How dare he sit there on the front row? How dare he even be here? But I kept calling on the name of Jesus for strength. And God gave me that strength. He gave me that strength, and to the point where when I came home and Daddy was sick, and the times I would see him until he passed. And God allowed me to bring the message because I wouldn't allow no one else to. I'm honored that my siblings understood me, loved me, had patience with me. So that's why I speak now. That's why I raise my voice. That's why I write. When I started journaling, it just pours out, and it's a healing. It's a healing, and it's strength. And now I'm fine. I'm fine.
That is so awesome. I just love it. I'm telling you, and as you was talking, I'm being reminded in one portion of the book that your father, he was an abusive man. He abused your mother, but yet he would polish you guys' shoes so that polish them white so that you guys could be prepared to go to church. I thought that was so bizarre. Um, I was like, I don't understand. If you are abusing your family, why are you cleaning their shoes to make sure that they are perfect to go to church? I just didn't get that. That was just really, really bizarre to me. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it is funny. I can remember those days because he would sit on the front porch of the old house. This was the old house before it burned. And he would sit on the porch with his cigarette hanging from his one side of his mouth. And he's sober Sunday mornings. And there's the white shoe polish with the sponge on it.
Right. I remember that.
To this day, that's why I don't like white shoes or black shoes. But that's all we had growing up. And he wanted to ensure Mama's shoes, her black ones, were clean, shiny, and our white ones were polished, no scars, no scuffs. At that time, I couldn't grab it. I just couldn't understand it. But as we discussed, as I said, my father was very prideful. None of his business, he did not like his business known to anyone. Anyone. His brothers and sisters, his friends. He didn't like his business known to anyone. So I don't know if that was a cover up. I'm going to make them look like everything is good. I never could really understand it, but as we are saying, spiritually, maybe that was his way of saying, forgive me. Maybe that's his way of saying, God, I want to do something. But my father had a weakness that he couldn't control. And really, my book was just to show the world when they read this book, you can't go off the look of a person. You can't go off the actions of a person. Don't look at their face. Wonder why in the world they acting like this. You have to look at what's behind it. That demon that have them in addiction, this demon that have them in pride, this demon that have them in malice and destruction and evilness. It's a demon. It's not the person. And when God revealed that to me last year, he had to show me myself. And he told me, you will not be your father. I said, God, you're right about that. What you want me to do? Tell your story and let them understand. Demons, they travel, they spread, they go. Be careful. Don't judge the person. You got to get to know the name of that demon and speak to it.
That's good, because when you said about, demons travel, they're also generational.
Very.
And yes, and I believe that is also part of the purpose of writing, your book, so that people would see, those type of generations and what occurs when we do not speak, when we do
Exactly.
not call them the names of what they are, when we do not call them out, right, to help that individual to break free of any bondage.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, Miss Deatrice, I'm telling y'all have got to get this book, Come Out Breaking Free of Any Bondage. It is a powerful book, and it brings you to tears as well, because you were actually, I asked myself, how can you endure, such pain like that? I'm even your mother, how could she endure such pain like that? But I think she understood, the cost, and what it, for her children. And so, but I'm thankful, as well, for her and all that she did for you all. But, you know, but we also understand that, we don't have to be in those situations,
That's true.
right?
That's
Yeah,
true.
that we can walk away from those situations, and so we don't have to stay there.
That's
But
true.
before we close out, what would you like to tell the people? And how can they find your book as well?
Yes. You can find my book on Amazon. Just put in DeatriceFBell.com, and my books are there. Also on my Facebook, there is a way that you can get directly in touch with me and make an appointment. You can book me. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm all over the place. And what I want to leave with everyone, this book, as I said earlier, it was not to bash my father. Um, it was to. It's very important that we teach and that we support. It's not that you're being nosy getting in someone's business, but there are signs you have to look at and look for. It's very important that children who are not being abused themselves still, this can be a mental issue for them. I held mine too long. So my drive and what I do now, I am purpose to mentor families, youth, dysfunctional children, parents who, as you say, is a generational curses that's down the line. If you don't recognize those curses, they will continue to travel. But it's important that you recognize it and that you denounce them and that you ensure your children are not attacked, nor does this spread any further.
All right. Well, y'all heard it from Miss Deatrice Bell. Y'all please go and get her book, Come Out Breaking Free of Any Bondages. And so, Partners in Grace International Broadcast, thank you for coming on tonight. Listen, people, we have two more authors that are coming on this week. I want to ask that you join us again on tomorrow night as well as Wednesday. And please don't forget, you got something you want to say, to
Yes,
get the book, Come Out Breaking Free of Any Bondage.
yes.
Mhm.
Apostle, I want to say to you, I thank you for this opportunity. You didn't even have to come this way to ask, but you did, and I'm grateful. And there is a purpose in this. What you are doing now is just the beginning of the shows that you will have, the audience that will sit and hear your interviews with so many people. And that is what I'm believing God has for you, and I'm looking forward to it. I thank you. I thank you, and I'm so grateful that you're in my life. I really bless. I'm so blessed by knowing you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And you're looking beautiful tonight. I'm loving the hair and
Oh,
the skin is all popping.
you're beautiful too.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I appreciate the blessings that you've spoken over Partners in Grace International Broadcast. I believe it too, that the Lord is going to take it into,
Amen.
a greater place and to do great and mighty things. All right. So, and another thing with this book, I see a movie. So get your book, everybody. Come out. Breaking Free of Any Bondage, right? By
Amen.
Deatrice Bell.
Amen.
All right. So again, we thank God and we thank you, Evangelist Deatrice Bell, for coming on tonight to Partners in Grace International broadcast. And so hopefully or prayerfully, maybe, I don't know, but see us on tomorrow night where we will have another author on tomorrow night talking about her book as well, Beyond Our Scars. And what I'm so grateful about is that all three authors in the books, they're connecting. And I didn't even realize that after I asked, them to come on, but all three of them are connecting. And as it is talking about your life, talking about healing, talking about moving forward in the Lord, and just talking about, how you can be set free from the things that have taken transpired in your life and how you can be free of those things. Woo, a lot of words. All right. So we're going to go ahead and sign off for tonight and we'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you again. We love you. God bless you and have a wonderful night.
Bless you.